Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the 15th episode of the Psychology of Lockdown series. I am once again joined by George Roach of the Line International. We have completed the 12 characteristics of mystification, and we are now moving on to the rules of dysfunction. So I hope you guys are as excited about these as I am. So far, the series has been really powerful. Just figuring out, so if mystification is the coping mechanism, and we went over all those characteristics of the variety of different coping mechanisms that people deal with when they're raised within a dysfunctional family. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the issue by talking about the rules of dysfunction and exactly what kind of behavior causes those coping mechanisms that you develop growing up in a dysfunctional family. So the first rule of dysfunction that we're going to cover today is control. I think a lot of us are feeling a lot of controlling behavior these days. and so, yeah, I'm going to welcome George to the show. Thanks for coming back once again. And I'm looking forward to finding out exactly how control works, not just in the family, but of course, in the psychology of lockdown in the big picture.
I'm looking forward to telling you.
Yeah.
Because, boy, it's prevalent. And I mean, in a general sense, people, they know they're being controlled.
Right.
It's naming what's being controlled so we can increase our voltage of understanding about why we feel as though we're being controlled. Some people could say, I feel like they're controlling me, but they don't really go any further. They go no further to break that down.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they're mystified, then they're just going to make excuses for the control, right? I mean, whatever it takes.
Well, this is true because we're talking about the actual behaviors that lead straight to mystification, to be baffled and bewildered. See, when somebody's controlling you, they're stifling you. It's the art of prevention. We've got to stop you from doing something that may conflict with my agenda for you. And you see, remember the great irony of controlling behavior. The great paradox is the more out of control a person is, the more controlling they become.
Mm-hmm.
So we've noticed as more out of control the government has become, whether that be with its spending, its narrative, its rules, its regulations, the more out of control the government has become.
Right. It's like they doubled
in front
down.
Of its people. Yeah.
Yeah. They double down every time. Every time you kind of bust them, every time you maybe push back a little bit, they just double down, and it's more and more and more.
They exemplify what I just said. The more out of control they are, the more controlling they have become. And we have seen this being increased over the past 13 months, where it's been a gradual increase intensity. I called it a tightening of the noose.
Right. The totalitarian tiptoe. Yeah.
Absolutely. The little tiptoe.
Yeah.
You can't see us. We're doing it, but you can't see us. You can feel it, but you can't see us. So what are they actually controlling? Right now, they're controlling our interactions. They're controlling our feelings because they're not giving us the truth. And they're also controlling our behavior. So when you control those three elements, all spontaneity is lost.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give people the opportunity to freely delve into, the why, the how, what's the agenda? Why are you guys doing this? Right? So there's a lot of secretiveness around controlling behavior and dishonesty. And I think what I want listeners to understand about control primarily is that it is an utter illusion. Controlling people are going to pay the price someday. You can't control anybody. The only person you can control is yourself.
Right.
But when you attempt to will your control over others, you should expect resistance. And that's where we're at right now. We're seeing a lot of resistance, a lot of protesting going on around the world about the lockdowns because people do not like to be oppressed. So if governments are trying to build laws around preventing people for exercising their right to peaceful assembly, in Canada it's 2C, if they're doing that, it's because the government, the people making the rules, are out of control.
Mm-hmm.
When society is afforded the right under 2C for the right to peaceful assembly, that is the people trying to put things back into balance, because nature wants balance. And when things get knocked off balance, people want, like nature abhors a vacuum. When the laws of homeostasis and balance and discipline go out of whack, people try to get in there and fix it. Just like children do when they see their parents' marriage going out of balance, their survival feels threatened. So they move in there to try to fix the ailing marriage in some way, shape, or form. Now, kids do this naturally because when they feel their survival is threatened, they're trying to, get back to the norm that they're used to, the stability that they're used to. Controlling people by their very nature destabilize everything. Everything.
Right.
Nothing can flourish, grow, take its shape, assume a natural position when people are busy imposing their wills on it. And because this is an illusion, and I would encourage people, if you want to know what controlling behavior does to relationships and to people, just spell the first 3 letters of illusion, and you'll see where controlling behavior is going. You'll see why we have this increase in drug overdoses, suicide, mental illness, stress, clinical depression, etc. It's all on the rise, because when you oppress the natural strivings of a human being or a human society, its automatic reaction is to pull itself up and back into balance. Because oppression, which is a very reckless, damaging form of control, because it's so propaganda driven, people naturally, when they start to realize, let me make one statement. For some of us, it didn't make sense from a long time ago. And many people, we all have different thresholds based on our upbringing, but some people took longer before they went, aha, this is getting really weird.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the other irony about control is that it gives people a sense of predictability. Things are about to go so awry, that the more control I exert over this, it gives me a sense of I'm in control. So it's very, very strange that people behave this way. And because it gives them that sense of predictability and security, they can feel okay. But that is temporary, because if control worked, they wouldn't need to continue using it.
Right.
So it doesn't work. This is why we have seen only an increase in the intensity of the desire of our governments to control us. Because Virginia Satir called us hungry dogs in the basement. And she said, the hungrier they get, the more you got to guard them. That's very interesting, because now the dogs are rising up saying, hey, we're hungry and we're trying to assume control. The people protesting are the hungry dogs in the basement. When they start to show that they're getting hungrier to get back to a balanced society, the government imposes more control and resistance against the people.
Right.
And they have to muster counter energy to keep us down again.
One of the things you were mentioning before the show was that they try to say that the people that are protesting, the ones that are valuing the individual rights to make choices for themselves, to express themselves in a free society, to be individuated, they're being posed as the ones that are out of control. These people aren't doing what I'm saying. I mean, that's why it triggers all this dysfunctional behavior, right? Because
it's projection.
Yeah. You rise up against the controlling behavior, and then they're going to get triggered. The controller is going to unleash all the stops to try to get you to conform into their box.
Absolutely. They want to make you fit their agenda, their mold. They want to subjugate you. There's a lot of subterfuge going on too. So people generally, if you weren't raised in a family where these behaviors were named for you, you're going to find it difficult in the adult life to name them.
Right.
But naming them is essential in order to develop your response. I mean, people are afraid because the uncertainty, the unpredictability, and the insecurity that they feel when their lives are being encroached on is a normal consequence, especially in a country like Canada, where we haven't experienced this kind of impedance ever before. So people naturally are puzzled at what to do to regain what? Control. And that's the best case scenario we can paint. When we see people debating and arguing, and now, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where we do a legal program. I've seen a dramatic increase in intensity in the desire for people to seek justice now. Some people
Great.
were waiting a little longer. They thought, you know what, I'm just not going to shop there anymore. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go to that. I'm going to quit my job. It's not the answer. Handing back in your membership to Costco is utterly meaningless to them. A company that is can buy your country 4 or 5 times over. They don't care if you hand back a membership.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to hold these control freaks accountable is to bring to them the reminders that we have, or remind them rather, that we have the rule of law. And the rule of law is what makes sense to people now. They're starting to gravitate more toward those explanations because that is really the only combatant against what we're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
in this oppressive society, this police state that we're seeing. Look what they just did to that pastor in the church, Artur. Uh, they have been going after them, and Grace Church as well. They've been doing this all over the place. I just got a call from the Mennonites the other day. Now they're about to attack the Mennonites with their controlling agenda
Right.
because they want to kill religion in this country. They want to kill people worshiping. They want to control how these people live.
Right. I
And
just
that,
was I was shocked here in the United States when they told people they couldn't have church services on Sunday. And there, I just would assume that that would have caused a great uprising and just nothing. I mean, we're seeing it. And one of the things I wanted to bring up with you, George, actually, was that I think that, I mean, just in what I would call this patriarchal culture, this culture that's based on hierarchy, it's really, I mean, to me, control is a big part of how these cultures work. And so a lot of us, I think, have experienced a controlling parent, for example.
mhm.
There's not a lot of emphasis that's placed in this culture on allowing your child to, listening to the child, allowing them to express their authenticity. This is how you raise an emotionally healthy child, right? And instead,
Well,
the emphasis is on going to school, doing what you're told, and then growing up, going to work, doing what your boss tells you. It just seems like so many of us have already been
mm,
preconditioned into controlling atmosphere that when the government comes down, it's just going to push most of us into a mystified state, which is clearly what's been.
well, exactly, because what you're seeing is a hierarchy of madness.
Yeah, right.
See, 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 discipline is about shared power. Okay. A
Hmm.
hierarchy of madness is, dad can get mad at anyone, mom can get mad at anyone but dad, right
Right,
down to the little one who tortures gerbils or
right,
something.
right.
Now, I love gerbils, so don't, send me an email on this. But I'm just, saying, uh, uh, how does that hierarchy of madness get repeated in other places, like schools, for instance? Well, the principal can get mad at anybody, the teacher can get mad at anybody, but the principal, right down to the pupil who interrupts the classroom. The judge can get mad at anybody, the prosecutor can get mad at anybody, but the judge, right down to the criminal who
Right.
tortures society.
And and
These are all
and
replays of the same hierarchy of madness.
yeah, look at the healthcare system, right? Nobody's allowed to get mad at Fauci. Can't get mad at
No,
Fauci. He's
and
everything he says is correct, and we all just have to do what he says. He's got
exactly,
control.
he's got control.
Yeah.
And look at what the that declaration of the doctors, that post you sent me earlier, with the what is it, the CPSO? Uh, um,
Yeah, let's explain that for the audience a little bit. What's
yeah, go
going on
ahead.
in Canada? Well,
Well, I
the
mean, the
yeah,
declaration where now this oppressive approach that the doctors cannot talk to any of their patients at all about the COVID, about the lockdowns, or anything to do with the lack of science involved
right.
in,
The
in this
the
in
the
this.
government issued an edict saying that doctors cannot disagree with the lockdown narrative, or else they're going to get punished. They may lose their license over it. And so
Wow, is that control?
yeah, right. These doctors had to write back and say, wait a minute, we've taken a Hippocratic oath. We're required to give informed consent. And there's lots of scientific evidence that we need to share with our,
Right,
patients
because
in
there's the
order to fulfill our
spontaneity
oath.
that right, there's the spontaneity that they have crushed.
Yeah.
You see, but the control rule breaks down life spontaneity is what and that happens constantly. You see, the control freaks believe that, you know, with the suffering of this control madness, they can will away the fundamental unpredictability and insecurity of life. Okay, and you can't.
Yeah.
The reality is there are going to be situations where there are doctors, despite what the CPSO says, there still will be situations where doctors are going to say "fooey" on you guys. We're going to have this conversation with my patient. She or he or this family has been with me for two and a half decades. I've looked after their marriage and their children, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
You see, there's the control rule. The spontaneity of life will break down the control rule. So these guys have a real problem on their hands trying to control the people or the doctors from having these spontaneous conversations that violate the expectations, the unrealistic, rigid, inhumane expectations being placed on our medical professionals.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've even noticed, like, for example, in Japan, they don't have such a hierarchical healthcare system, and there's a lot more independence amongst the doctors there.
Yeah.
And so they picked up on the ivermectin treatment right away. They've had very few COVID deaths. Hasn't been a problem for them because there wasn't the hierarchy of madness. And I'm going to stick you to that term. I love it. I mean, isn't it so true? The person at the top of the hierarchy, the person in control,
Yeah.
they can just say whatever's comes to their mind. They can imagine, well,
And you're
whatever
subjugated to
from
it.
their own whims, and you're subjugated to it. You don't have the freedom to be able to say, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to choose something else.
Well, it's pretty incredible how, that now these doctors, just like, the child would see their siblings, they would think if the sibling got punished, they deserved it. The kid goes no further. The parents did it, so it must be, Jimmy, you must have done something wrong. Jimmy's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm getting punished. Well, for kids in a family to decipher that, now spin that into the public now, currently.
Yeah,
Why are they doing this to the doctors? Did the doctors did something wrong? They
right.
violated a rule they didn't know about? So the public that are very gullible don't understand these people are being oppressed. They begin to think that maybe these doctors did something wrong. These medical practitioners, maybe they're deserving of this newfound discipline,
Right.
which is really a hierarchy of madness parading around as necessary
Yeah.
discipline. It isn't. It's undisciplined discipline. That's what that is. They're literally trying to will themselves. I mean, really, what it is self will run riot. They're just doing it because they can do it, not for any really smart or intelligent or necessary reason. They're just doing it because they can.
Yeah, I mean, let's delve into this a little bit because I think even the controlling behavior is actually a coping mechanism. These people think the people at the top of the hierarchy of madness, I know in family situations, uh, for example, if you have an elder sibling, the parents were dysfunctional, the elder sibling had to take control. They had to take care of the other kids. And they learned that that control was a lifeline. And then that'll often, as they get older and they get into other relationships, they start developing their own family. They take that coping mechanism with them. They think they have to have control, and all it does is tear apart their relationship with their spouse, and it makes the kids uncomfortable, and et cetera, et cetera. The cycle of violence is repeating. But that's what this is all about. It's like, I think these people that, oh my god, I'm the head of a health organization in my county or in my country, and the COVID thing is coming, and I don't know, I can't control it. You can't control the spread of a disease. It's just you can't control it. But they
That's
got to
right.
try. They've got to try, and it just triggers in them the need to be controlling, and then it's like, again, it just doubles down on itself until
It's
they're
a
doing
learned
everything they
behavior.
can. Yeah.
It's a learned behavior. The first environmental behavior that we learn to uh, gain control of is control.
Yeah.
you know, as kids, we fought over the controller for the TV, for instance.
Right.
You know, we wanted the keys to get in the house. You see, we wanted control. We started to learn earlier on that we could affect our environment. We could impose our will and control over our environments. We saw our parents doing this, so we begin to emulate that behavior. But that that healthy sense of childhood control can become very distorted later on as people begin to realize, hey, I can actually control taking, candy from somebody. I can control that person into giving me their money. This turns into manipulation.
Yeah, right.
Control and manipulation are very good friends
Sure.
uh, in
Sure.
in the in the in the hierarchy of madness. You've got to manipulate gullible people. This stuff is as old as dirt. It's been
Well,
around forever. Alice Miller called it the poisonous pedagogy. You
mhm.
know, that again, when I say the more out of control a person is, the more controlling they become because they fear losing control. This is the great paradox, once again, of controlling conduct. Is its aim, excuse me, isn't something that is useful to secure a better place in a situation. It actually is meant to comfort the controller
Right.
who's out of control,
Right.
as our governments are right now.
Yeah.
So the more they see us rising up, the more they fear losing control because they're so close to the brink of losing power and control, right? The only way for them to feel like they have more control is to impose more control.
Yeah.
What a mess.
It is the cycle of violence, and it's gonna go on and
Absolutely.
on until we as a community, we as a society realize that there's another option, that's freedom, right? That's allowing people to make choices for themselves, and guess what? Because you can't, as you mentioned, towards the beginning of the program, you can't control others. That's like the first thing I learned when I got married, right? Like, oh, like we have to figure out how to make this relationship work out without controlling each other because
She's
and
a
I
separate human being.
yeah, yeah, I can't just make decisions and think that
Whoa.
like it's
I
just
thought
going
she
to
was
work
an
out.
extension of me.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's codependency, George. That's codependency.
Yes, it is. 100%. The two kids are going to be duking it out. Don't worry. It's going to be the
Right.
Hatfields versus the McCoys. Is it, starts out, a lovely day in Santa Fe when you're in love, and then you hit the divorce court.
Yeah.
Now, man, if you see that on a split screen, that's a pretty heavy trip. What happened from there to there? A lovely day in Santa Fe when you're in love, then you hit the divorce court and you're getting the green Christmas ornaments and she's getting the red ones.
Mhm. Mhm.
What a trip.
But even
So yeah, we've got to go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, even in a healthy family, like again, like in these patriarchal cultures, the strong father figure controls the family. I mean, it's like almost ingrained in our blood, and then the kids should be what heard and or
Seen and not heard.
seen and not heard,
I
right? I
think
mean, this is a recipe for emotional disaster, right? I
it
mean,
it
raising children in this environment, and thank God for psychology and analysis like this that can show
yeah,
us that if you want to be emotionally healthy, you need to not control other people, including your kids. You have to listen to their needs. I mean, you're as a parent, of course, you're the adult, you're the one that's taking care of things. Ultimately, you're the ones that are going to make a decision. But even when your kid is 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, you need to listen to what they're saying and actually empathize with their situation and hear what's going on. And the government can't treat us like we're 5 year olds.
that's right. Absolutely.
It's out of control.
Completely. And people have to recognize it. And don't be afraid to stand up to these control freaks.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to understand when you're being controlled, you are being prevented from being who you are.
Right.
Everyone's first choice is their own choice. That's your first choice.
At,
When you're thwarted from exercising your own free will and your own choice, again, the person who is inflicting this on you, uh, it must learn to expect resistance. The government, they're doing all this control stuff to us, pardon me, with the lockdown. And now, instead of saying, well, they have every right to rise up above us, look what we're doing to them. They're not going to do
Right.
that. Now they're making more rules to further control us out of showing them that we're not going to tolerate their control of us.
You're right. Absolutely.
I mean, it is an unending circular fighting game.
Yeah. A classic dysfunctional relationship.
Absolutely. Completely codependent.
Yeah.
I mean, again, mimicking all the childhood rules, and in our next leg, now we're going to move into the perfectionistic rule. If you look at Trudeau, how perfect he is,
Mm-hmm.
he's acting like
Fauci,
he's doing
right?
everything, and
Yeah.
Fauci, and they're all acting like they're doing everything according to the book, while there's piles of evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. It is so funny. I think these rules, it's just amazing when we get into this stuff. And it's like, yep, this is what they're doing. They're controlling us. Next week, it's going to be perfectionism. Yeah, they're pretending like they're perfect. And guess what? Nobody's perfect. And that's why you don't get to control somebody else.
That's it.
So, well, that's
Exactly.
cool. And I guess the other thing I was going to mention is when somebody is trying to control you, you have an obligation to set healthy boundaries to that individual, that person, that entity, and that is
Absolutely.
that's the response of a healthy person. Again, just going back to what we were describing before the show, they try to depict those who are calling out for healthcare freedom in this instance as the people that are out of control. Well, they're not. They might not get vaccinated. They're hurting the rest of us. They're not wanting to wear masks. They're hurting the rest of us. The control behavior and the excuses they come up with to empower themselves with that control. It's just going to be never ending. And people really do need to set boundaries, or else the cycle of violence will go on forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the purpose of control is to prevent people from relying on behaviors that maintain their freedom. The purpose of control is to stifle freedom. There's no other reason for it.
Yeah.
No other reason. The person who wants to rely on control is clearly saying, I have no self-discipline and no self-control. Things are about to spin completely out of whack for me. I've got to impose my will on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's precisely the message.
It is, in fact, a rule of dysfunction. It's very unhealthy behavior, and it's really sad to see that it has gotten so many millions of people across the globe now in its grip. And hopefully enough of us will have the emotional fortitude to set those healthy boundaries and say, this is the line that you cannot cross.
Well, this is exactly it. We've got to learn to say no.
Yeah.
We have to say no. People have to be willing to learn that simple word, no.
Yeah, probably the most important word in the English language, right? I've heard that before.
Yep.
Yeah, if you don't learn how to say no, then eventually you're gonna learn the lesson the hard way. And that's because you're gonna end up dealing with a lot of controlling behavior, and it's not gonna turn out pretty for you unless you can stand up. So
Absolutely.
very cool,
Absolutely.
George. Very cool. Thanks again for coming on, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the heart of these rules of dysfunction, because I think it's like so clear as day when you start getting into the rules of dysfunction, just like with the characteristics of mystification. Like, oh, okay, with mystification, it was like, why aren't people seeing the peer-reviewed studies about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine that say they can save 85% of the lives, prevent these hospitalizations from COVID? Why can't they see that? Well, they're mystified. Why are they mystified? Because they've been raised under the rules of dysfunction, and controlling behavior is a big part of what they're used to.
Control.
Yeah.
Out of control.
Great.
Lack of control.
I love
Stop
this series.
controlling people. Yeah.
I love this series because it's explaining what's going on. I've heard so many people go, like, I posted all this peer-reviewed literature and people are like laughing at me and calling me a conspiracy theorist, and I don't understand, and it's like, well, This is what's really going on. If you don't
I get
describe it,
people, well, you've heard it too, Doug. People say, "I don't know why, and why are they doing this? I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know." Listen, now you know. We're giving you the rules. We're going to break down
right,
the rules for you so you know what to look for. We're going to name them so you know what to look for,
yeah.
so that when you see it, you can give it the proper name and then hopefully the proper response.
All right, awesome. Well, we better wrap it up. It's been about 30 minutes. Next week we're doing perfectionism, right?
Yes.
Is the rule of dysfunction. So we get to talk about all of our favorite politicians and
Oh, that's going to be a fun one.
all the people at the top of the hierarchy of madness. Yeah. Okay. Very
Absolutely.
cool. If you have any closing remarks, and please let people know where they can get in touch.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing I do want to say is remember that control is an illusion. And
Mm,
if you see people controlling you, the more intense the control, the more out of control the controller is. It's got nothing to do with you. Live up to your own first choices and stick to them. You have every right to maintain control over your responses and the consequences of those responses on you. And nobody on this planet has a right to control you.
yeah.
So if you have anything you want to say about that to me, feel free. Media@thelineinternational.com. You can get us on Twitter at the line media. You can also catch us on Facebook, Instagram, and Telegram.
Very cool. And I have been your host. My name is Doug McKenty. I am the host of the weekly podcast, The Shift with Doug McKenty. You can catch all of my work and this, my podcast, all this entire series, the other show, Behind the Line, The Facts and the Fiction, which is more of a news and information show that George and I are doing on COVID. And a lot of other work that I produced in the past at www.theshiftnow.com. I urge everybody to sign up for the newsletter. That way, you'll get everything that I produce out of my studio come into your inbox directly, at least twice a month. And if you're not ready to do that, you can find me on Facebook, Doug McKenty. My personal page is actually kind of blowing up. I also have a Shift page where I post everything at the Shift with Doug McKenty. I'm on YouTube at the Shift, and I'm on Twitter at D McKenty. I do have a Telegram account as well at the Shift with Doug McKenty, so you can catch a lot of the stuff there. I post everything I produce there, as well as a lot of the news and information I'm starting to post articles and stuff of interest to me on Telegram, and that way we can avoid the whole Facebook fact checking thing. So I'll send people to the Telegram channel. But thanks everybody for listening. This is such important information. Like you said, George, to name this behavior, first you got to give it a name, and then you can start to you can see it for what it is, and you can start to change that behavior. So instead of living in a dysfunctional society, we can live in a healthy, emotionally healthy society where everybody is free to be true to their authentic selves. That's the goal.
Absolutely.
Awesome, George. Thanks
Well
again.
done.
We'll see you next
Thank
week.
you. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
You too.